Hey guys, Matt with BleepinJeep. I think I see Josh back there. We are trying to get this thing ready for SEMA. We've been working our butts off for you guys to get this thing finished in time to win this competition, and today is the day. Today is the day we're gonna pull all of the pieces into the shop, into the same area, and bolt them together. Hopefully we remember where everything goes, because we might get everything backwards. We've got a car and a bag up there, we've got a frame over here, an engine over there, hubs over there, brakes over there, we've got an axle, transmission, transfer case in there, there's another axle out there, a bed out there, and all that has to get put together in 1 week, or in the next 30 minutes actually. Let's get started. So I made the mistake of building this axle on the table, and it's way too heavy for us to lift that thing. Can't get the cherry picker in here because it's too tight. I think the tractor might do it. Also, the cherry picker has an engine on it right now. But to get the tractor in here, we got to move the Scorpion out. First, we got to move all the crap that's around it. Then we got to move the Comanche out, and then I think we might be able to get in here and pick this sucker up. All we need to do is get it on the ground. We could manhandle it maybe, but hernias. Those are not a good thing. Ask me how I know. Let's see if this thing will even start.
What are you guys doing on the ground? You left them on the ground?
Okay, now we need to get the other axles because it's got the stands that we need. So we need those stands. So let's take that axle and put it here. You know what would work great for lifting an axle? An axle strap. Alright, one problem solved. Now the next problem is we were going to use my truck to go somewhere and the brakes are gone. It's got no brakes and it blew a line underneath. So I want to see if I can get this truck in the shop. But we have the bed in the bed. So I don't know if it'll fit through the door. What's your guess?
Barely.
Barely? I think it'll go. Let's see. Is it going to start?
Barely.
Barely? Alright, next up we've got to put these axle tie-down tabs on the axle. We already painted this the other day and completely forgot about these. So these are something that we sell on BleepinJeep.com. We make these. Basically, you weld them here and then you can hook your straps for whenever you are strapping down to a trailer. It makes it super quick and simple. You don't have to worry about strapping around brake lines and bending all that stuff. Makes it a lot faster. One of the things we also do is laser etch a line right there. So if you want to put it on something flat, you just cut along the dotted line and then you can weld it to something flat, like so. In our case, we're gonna put it right here, but I'm gonna have to take some of the paint off and weld that, and then we'll just respray over that. And then we also are waiting on the coilovers so that we can make coilover mount, so we'll just take some paint off and we use a little wire wheel to do that. Alright, there it is. Now when you're ready to strap down, it's just click and you're ready to go. You don't have to worry about anything else on the trailer. Is it working?
It will.
So last time I was towing the Jeep, I had a brake check on the highway. After that, the brakes weren't working for the entire trip, and so couldn't figure it out because apparently the line blew and all of the fluid was leaking into the fuel rail, or into the... Why can't I speak this morning?
It's too early.
All of the fluid was leaking into the frame rail and it wasn't going on the ground, so we couldn't figure out where it was coming from. But anyway, hopefully we'll have that fixed. The problem with this Tundra is that it came from Canada originally, and so everything under there is pretty rusty, including the brake lines.
You said it was pretty rusty when you bought it, right?
It was rusty when I bought it, yeah.
It had nothing better with time.
It's lasted 8-9 years so far.
And in the end, I still have no friends.
You're gonna get us demonetized. That was such an accurate representation. It's gonna get flagged.
I don't know if that was very accurate.
Hey, look, guys. We got a Christmas present. Looks like the dog's got a little treat as well. Alright, we're trying to put the front axle back in, but we have an issue, and we're going to try a sort of unique solution. So when you change the angle of your perch, your spring perch, especially on this side, it complicates things because of the way this works. On this axle, the U-bolt sits right here, and on the other side, in the cast, is 2 bolts that hold things down. So the way this should work is that plate sits here and sandwiches the leaf spring. But the problem with that is we want to change the angle. So we're trying to change the pinion angle to be different than what it was from factory. So somebody has already welded this wedge in here, which changes that angle, points the pinion up, which is good. But then the problem is you put the leaf spring in here, and check this out. So now the leaf spring is at a different angle than those bolts. So if you put that here, for one, the bolts don't even line up. And if they did, they would be way up here and they wouldn't sit flat on this plate. So we're going to attempt to put this other wedge on here in the opposite direction, which should re-flatten out that plate. Might have to offset it a little bit. We'll see once we get there. I've never seen anybody do that. This is a really big wedge. What I also did to add strength is I drilled and tapped another bolt hole. So there was only 2, so I added 1 more, and that should add extra strength. And then I put another hole in this plate. What I've seen some people do is take another U-bolt and notch here and put a big giant U-bolt. The problem is it has to kind of dogleg over to go around the leaf spring and around the pumpkin, and I think that's a really good idea. The problem with that is nobody makes one, so you have to kind of figure it out on your own. So we would need a U-bolt in an odd shape, and we would need to kind of bend it on our own. Where do you get U-bolts made? Just at the U-bolt factory?
Mm-hmm. So we'll start by opening the hole up in this plate, or this wedge, so that it fits over that bolt, and see where we are from there.
That does level it out pretty good right there.
Yeah, I had to weld 2 wedges together to equal that 1 wedge down here. So that's an extreme angle, but it does flatten it out when you add the 2 together. It goes that way a lot further than it goes this way. So I would say if we just did that,
Okay.
probably be good. So this kit right here is actually longer. And the reason for that is to help prevent axle wrap. So this is from Barnes 4-wheel drive. And the perch is longer, and this plate is longer, and it keeps the axle from wanting to turn into an S and bending, because it's got a bigger flat spot for it to sit on at the bottom. Don't beat me! Barnes is an Onyx Elite member partner as well, so you can get, I think, 15 or 20% off if you're an Elite member of the Onyx Off-Road. SEMA build.
What does SEMA stand for?
It's something really, really boring.
Hey Google, what does SEMA stand for?
Easy, the Specialty Equipment Marketing Association, although the acronym originally stood for Speed Equipment Manufacturing Association.
Speed equipment manufacturing.
Speed equipment. We're not building for speed, that's for sure.
Alright, I think that thing's ready to go in. Okay, you guys said this thing was heavy, but look how light this thing is. Gosh, you're supposed to make it look easy.
One hand? Kind of like that, except on it. Did y'all get that? Got a little, what do they call that? Easter egg.
Easter egg?
Easter egg.
That's what happens when you eat eggs. This is how you do all SEMA builds, people. Alright, check it out. We got the front axle bolted in, ready to drive away. Looking good. Now it's time for the rear.
You having problems?
Yeah.
Okay.
You?
Yep.
Yay. It's actually not bad. Well, the upper was a lot easier. Alright, check this out. Got the rear axle in now too. 3 more steps and we'll be driving this thing. Alright, next step, get motor in. To do that, we need to roll this all back, and right now we've got 8,000 jack stands under there. So we're going to try to fix that. Josh, go! Okay. How heavy was that?
It was okay.
Okay. Gotta be careful with this side, because if it hits something, it flips instead of stops. Alright, now we gotta pick this up and try to finagle it into this hole right here. So we've set the frame down as low as possible because the engine stand won't lift very high, but should be able to get it just barely in there. And then our 2 engine mounts are here and there. I think that's all we've got, right?
Yep, it doesn't quite go in far enough. It's this, and it's slightly off center because of the way it's lifting. So you gotta kind of pry it around.
Well, just because it came out doesn't mean it can go back in.
It does.
We've got this set out to the half-ton position, even though this thing is probably maxing that out.
It's right at maxing it out. The engine's 1,000 pounds, so.
Don't put a transmission on there or nothing.
Nope.
Uh-oh. You've got the bell housing on there. You're over by 18 pounds. Too heavy for me.
It should sit down on that thing.
Go in. You're home. There it is. Went in a little bit. Just send it like that. Seems odd that it had to be done that way. Okay, let's hope that works. We're preparing for the Olympic Games. Are you ready?
Jumping jacks. Warm it up.
My muscles are still too stiff.
We need to get our nuts.
Yeah.
Found our nuts.
Found the nuts. Alright, so this is one heavy son of a gun. We've got to carry that into the other shop over there.
We gotta make sure we don't drop our nuts.
Okay, that's not as bad as the transmission one. Where are the nuts? Alright, so now we gotta figure out how to support your case, bro. Did a video on that back when I did the Scorpion, so what we're gonna do is make some mounts on the back of this because there's a lot of weight just hanging off after the transmission mount, and when you hit a bump or whenever you hit a rock, it's wanting to torque that, so we need to stop that from torquing and also stop it from falling.
Did you have a bloody face when you made that video? Is that a different one?
I think it was a different one, but I was making a transmission support during that video. Okay, we got one more heavy object coming in. Everybody look out. I'm going to mark an X marks the spot for the center balance point. That's going to help in the future if it stays there. Okay. Look at that. Man, that is so cool. So protected. Alright guys, check this out. I've got two transfer case supports. This one goes right here over these studs. And then you weld this onto that. A little bushing, a sleeve, and then you can mount that to the whatever you want actually, but we're going to mount it probably to the skid plate. Now I don't like mounting things to the skid plate in case you were to hit on the skid plate and it were to bend up. That would bend your transfer case up, but this skid plate is very stout, so if you're going to do that, make sure that your skid plate is very, very stout. I have another one. So this one is for torque. It's supposed to keep your 205 from torquing, and this one here is a support, so it's right down the center, And you probably would only need one of these, but since this is a heavy wrecker, we're gonna add all the beef that we can get. So this one goes right here. You take these bolts out, you put that in, and then it's got this guy. So you cut that to length, you weld that to here, and then at the bottom of that, same as the other side, it gets a bushing and a sleeve, and then this one came with some tabs to mount that as well. So let me get all that welded up, and then we'll show you where we're at. I guess that's what you get with eBay parts. This thing doesn't quite line up. It looks like their plasma cutter was a little off that day, so I'm going to open up these holes so that'll fit over there. Well, that was fun. The problem with re-drilling plasma cut holes is that it often hardens the hole. So my drill bits did not want to puncture that or cut that, but finally got it. Now let's continue. This one comes with longer bolts, thankfully. Otherwise those will be too short. Alright, change of plans. This would be so simple. It would only take me maybe 10 minutes to make all this work by just welding these here, welding that, and then having the bushing right here. The only problem with that is taking off the skid plate. So if you can imagine, the drive shaft's going to be here, the body is going to be right here, and if I wanted to drop the skid plate after this thing is fully assembled, we would have to reach up in here with our hands around the drive shaft and somehow get these bolts out. And same thing with putting it back together before we could drop the skid plate. So to get around that issue, what we need is another bar just like this. It's going to take a lot more work right now, like a lot more work right now, but in the future it's going to save me a lot of work. So I was kind of going back and forth whether or not I wanted to do this, because it would be so simple to just weld that right there. I think what I'm going to do instead is weld a tube from this tube to that tube, and then in the middle of that tube you put these plates right here, similar to what we did up here, and then these plates will have bolts. And so these mounts will get mounted to this cross member. That way it's not connected to the skid plate at all, which does help by, you know, if you hit the skid plate really hard and it were to bend, it's not going to break anything. But also I'll be able to drop the skid plate quickly, even on the trail if I needed to, but I wouldn't have to reach up in here and try to get these bolts out. The whole skid plate would just drop out, and then this bar would drop out separately if needed. It needs to be removable. Alright, so here is our clamps. We're going to put that right about here. We need a tube that's about 2.5 inches long with a cope on the end, and same on the other side. Oh my goodness, look who it is. Look who showed up today. This is the exciting part of the day.
It's just random.
What you got for us today?
Egg rolls and stir fry.
We're having Chinese, or is it Thai? Or Korean?
It's food. I don't know.
Put in your mouth and eat it.
Yes, thank you.
Yummy. So where'd you get this, babe?
From the good old Sammers.
From Sam's?
From Sam's Club.
Wow. Good. Explain what you got going on over here, Joshua.
I am changing heim joints. Yep. Crappy heim joints. Trying to change heim joints.
Is that going to take away our budget?
No. These were cheap heim joints.
Cheap heim joints?
Yes, and these are maintenance items, so they do not count against the budget.
All right. We're finding all the loopholes. Okay, tell me a problem you found and how you're fixing it.
That's going to be the problem right there.
Alright, so looks like
You got to cut that short.
gotta cut that shorter and make sure that doesn't rotate down. Right?
Yep.
Otherwise everything going smoothly over here?
Otherwise, everything's okay.
Good.
Problem is, we need 2 more months. That's the problem. The solution is, we work harder.
Work harder. Alright. Let's see. I'm going to weld this up as much as I can right here so that it doesn't move too much. My problem is I don't know where my welding helmet is. Here it is. It's hiding. Alright. Alright, now the real question is, can I pull this out without breaking all the tacks? So I'm going to unbolt this and try to pull this out, because then I have to finish weld everything. Okay, moment of truth here. Oh, it's a little spicy. Alright, there it is. So I need to weld that up. Weld there, and then I need to pull those off very carefully and weld those up as well. Alright, there's our pieces. I'll let those cool down and then we'll put the bushings back in and we'll be good to go. Oh yeah, I need to paint them. That's always the worst part, isn't it? Waiting for paint to dry. First I gotta let it cool, then I gotta paint it, then I gotta let the paint dry. See what Josh is doing in here. You got any problems yet?
Now we do have a problem.
Oh.
It's a big problem.
I didn't mean it. I don't want problems.
We got one. The only reason this steering worked before, is because it was built so crappily. When you do it right and take all the slop out of it, it doesn't work. It can't work.
What do you mean?
I mean, when this has no slop in it, that means this can't move side to side, which means it doesn't even line up with this anymore. But this is turned it's farther in spot. It goes out and goes in. It can't work. That needs to be rotated that way.
Huh.
The only reason it worked before is because there was so much slop and everything.
I'd never even thought about that previously, but why would they have this one going up and down and that one going...
Yeah, they both need to be up and down like this for it to work.
Alright. Well, so we just cut this off and weld it in a spot that's horizontal.
Yes.
I guess. Let me scratch my head on this one for a second. Alright, we figured out that we need to get this horizontal, but it can't really go down any further. Can't really go up any further. It needs to be right about in plane with this bar, or close to it. What if we cut this off right about there, or maybe even lower, so we'd have some space. And then we could take these and just weld bracketry until that was our new area to put the pin through.
Yeah, just kind of offset it this way or this way, since there's just, I mean, ideally you just cut this whole thing off and start from scratch.
Yeah.
But that's going to be a pain to cut off.
We could cut it off, but it doesn't really help us because we'd have to build something back up. There's already something structural there, and I'm thinking
the wrong shape.
If we cut this at just the right height, we can use that to set this down here, and then we'll put the pin through, pull this all the way to the top, and then tack it into place and build some bracketry then to strengthen that all up. Plan?
Sounds like a plan.
You don't seem too excited about it. I mean, we could start over. We could buy a PSC RAM. We could build all kinds of cool stuff. But number one, we're on a budget, and
Number one, we're on a budget.
and number two, we have like 3 days, and this has to be at SEMA. So we're coming out here to look at the Comanche to see if that gives us any ideas. So here's how we did that. It's basically this big, like, swooping wave shape. It's at an angle. It's a different angle than this.
But those are Heims. You have a little bit of play different directions.
Yeah, and this is hydro assist, but still, it's very similar. Well, that was supposed to take 5 minutes, and it only took all day long. But other than getting my fingerprints all in the wet paint, I think it turned out okay. So now, when we need to remove anything, it'll all come out from the bottom in the future, and that'll make it a lot easier to do that. What about you? What kind of trouble are you getting into?
Building the ram mount.
Where do you got it? Over here? That looks pretty good so far.
You mean I haven't screwed it up yet?
Not yet. There's still time. So this was supposed to just go back together because we didn't change anything. What happened?
We made it better, and it didn't work anymore.
So making it better made it worse?
Yes. Yes, it did. So now we have to make it way better.
Do you think we're going to be better off or worse off?
Well, we're definitely going to be better off.
Unless it breaks off the axle?
Unless it breaks off the axle.
Alright. So this over here is basically just to strengthen up this section of the frame, but it's also going to kind of hide everything that's going on. You'll be able to see this through the wheel past the tire. So that is a little plate that's going to get welded in there, but I think we need some speed holes, so I'm going to make some speed holes right there just for looks and a little bit of strength and speed, of course. So to do that, I've got these dimple dies from Swag Off-Road. So basically we just need to cut a hole that size, and then we're going to put this in the press and squish it, and that'll make it stronger for one, because it puts some angles in this flat steel, which is going to make it stronger, but it'll also have a cool look to it. Look at that! That's fancy. Straight as it can be right now.
Straight as they're gonna be.
Straight as it can be. Alright, this is the BleepinJeep alignment tool. It says right there. So this goes right on here. It's great for doing an alignment at home, but it's also great for building rock crawlers, setting up steering like we're doing now. So to get this steering perfectly centered, we want to make sure our axle is centered and our wheels are straight. Otherwise, our steering isn't going to be straight. So we're going to get that situated first. You can find these on BleepinJeep.com. This video brought to you by BleepinJeep. Alright Josh, you know how they say laser alignment? Well this is our laser. So as long as there's no gap here or here, we have a perfect laser alignment going on. Okay, well we need to move the axle that way.
Yes.
I'm just kidding. All I'm looking for is that this is flat.
Yeah.
And then when we twist this, we want to make sure that our alignment here is the same front to back, while maintaining no gaps here. That'll be as straight as we can get with leaf springs. Okay, got a tape measure?
We can make up for any it's off too. a little bit with that adjustment.
Okay, I got 67 and a quarter plus 1. Whoa, we are way off.
Yeah, I would say so. Stop there.
Check the string.
There we go. 67 and 3/4. 68 and 1/4. So need to move a 1/4 inch.
We're gonna run out of room on our heims.
All right, that's dead even. We can go with a little bit of toe out. I like a little toe out.
So we just did all that, not necessarily for an alignment, but we wanted to make sure that the axle was straight, the wheels are straight, so that when we attach this halfway through its throw, when we turn, we won't have more steering to the right or steering to the left. So now what we need to do is measure the ram. We know that the ram has 8 inches of throw, so we need to pull this out 4 inches, and wherever that ends up, that's where we're going to weld here. So we'll just pull it all the way out. Don't knock it over. Okay. There we go. Oh yeah, it's gonna be great.
Great.
Okay, what we're gonna do is tack this and then see if it'll go through its motion without binding. Okay, moment of truth here.
It's lifted my side.
That's not good,
Hang on.
because I don't think it went all the way. Now it's hitting there.
It's hitting? How'd that happen? Is that all the way? Is that the end of the ram?
No, it's just binding.
What's binding?
I would assume the motion. The motion is binding.
I agree, the motion is binding.
You know what the problem is you tried to get rid of all the slop in the system.
Yes, I did.
When you don't have misalignment spacers and heims, it's hard to get rid of the slop in the system because everything has to be perfect at that point. So it's similar to the way they had it before, where it was kind of coming up and then over.
Yeah.
That's
I'm not even sure if that's going to do it though.
It will. If this is straight up and down just like that one, then it has to move in and out. There won't be any reason for it to bind.
Yeah, it will.
What?
Because this goes up and down at a different rate that this goes up and down. If those aren't up and down at the same rate, then it's going to bind.
But we angled it so that it is at the same
It's
rate.
not the same.
Similar. I bet if we cut these tacks off and just tack it horizontal, let's try that and just
Let's try it.
check. Another thing we could do, is there any way we could replace this with a heim?
If you can find something that'll thread onto that has a heim on it, then
You just take it and you just weld the snot out of a heim. You just weld a heim on the end of it.
yeah.
I guess you wouldn't have any adjustment at that point.
No, but you don't need it.
Okay, let's do that real quick. Alright, I don't retract my previous statement. I do think it would be better parallel, but what we did was we were fighting ourselves.
So we're definitely not above making mistakes and being idiots, and it's been a long day, and we're not afraid to show you guys that sometimes we're idiots.
So we were fighting this for 2 hours, and no matter what we did, it was binding. Turns out it was something stupid simple. This jam nut right here was all the way out towards the edge of this. We never tightened it. But what was happening, it was jamming against the arm right here. And because of that, every time it would turn to the right, it would bind. And we kept thinking it was in the ram. So for about 2 hours, we were making different brackets, different shapes, all this stuff. And then Josh finally, from that side, looked over and was like, wait a minute. I think I see something touching. And it was that stupid thing this whole time. So we went back to this design. It's still is very close. It's very tight. It binds just a little right at the edge, and it wants to pivot up. You can see it kind of pivot up at the last second, but I think it's just enough that it'll kind of self-clearance and work its way into there. And I think what we can do is align these heims parallel, and then that'll allow it a little bit of movement, a little bit of pivot. If you don't want an arm to pivot, what you do is you take those heims and you offset them, and then it can't go anywhere because there's a little bit of movement in heims. But if you offset them and then tighten the jam nuts, then it can't pivot.
I wonder, so take this the whole way this way. Okay, so it's not even close to hitting this side when we're turned, so we could offset this one a little to the back and offset the other one a little bit.
It's trying to pivot at the end, so if we were to put them parallel, it would have the maximum range of motion in all directions.
Right, but
anyway,
it works.
Done.
It works. We got a little bit of bracing and weld up to do on this side because it's just kind of...
That's just tacked in.
It's tacked on a perch. It's like a seesaw right now.
That's what worries me the most at this point is we got to make this very structurally sound, because if you come off of a ledge, you don't want that just snapping off, because that's all of the steering is supported right here.
The piece coming off the axle itself is strong. That's like 3/4 inch steel. But we have to attach the little hat. Put the top hat on Slash's head and don't let it come off.
And remember, all of what we're doing is kind of half-assed because we can't spend any more money, so we can't buy any more parts. So we're just having to build stuff from scratch.
From scratch, kind of using what was already there.
Using what was already there, and labor is the only thing we can spend money on, is our time.
Or is this maintenance? Would that be maintenance? It didn't work, so we had to fix it.
It's not maintenance, but all we're using is a couple pieces of 1/4 inch plate.
Right.
Really, everything else is just
was already there.
Or we're scabbing parts off of that Toyota.
We could be cutting 1/4 inch off that Toyota and using it.
It's got some more steel over there we could use.
We'll use that whole roll cage. Why can't we just take that roll cage and set it? Wasn't that a comment? Why can't we just set that roll cage down on top of the Jag?
Yeah, somebody said in a comment, which I don't blame them, this Jag's going to be a lot nicer than they expected, I guess. But they said to cut the roll cage off of there and just weld it on the Jag. I don't think that would work out so well.
Yes, I don't want to do it either.
I don't think it would fit. For one, the hood on that thing is about this long, and the hood on the Jaguar is about that long.
Jag's wider.
It's just not the same shape.
No. So we're gonna keep welding pieces of metal to this thing, and it's gonna be really heavy and strong. We hope. It's gonna be heavy. We hope it's strong. Good morning. So this morning, after a long night, decided we need to go ahead and get these covered up, get these protected. So what we have from Yukon is their nice heavy-duty Dana 60 diff covers. These hold up really well, take lots of abuse, and it's going to look pretty on there too. Yukon is an elite partner with Onyx, so you can find some deals and savings there. Don't know what they are right offhand, but I'm sure on their site it says. What I'm going to use to put it on for a gasket, these lube blocker gaskets. These are excellent. I put them on everything. Any rear end I have that they make one for, I use them because they're reusable. So yeah, they cost more up front, but you don't have to deal with cleaning RTV off every time. And I think on the WJ, when I still had the Dana 30 in the front, I probably had that cover off 20 times or more throughout the year or two because I kept breaking stuff, and the gasket was fine. I mean, it was probably ready to be changed at that point, but I mean, it's just easy. You know, you bolt it back on, you don't have to worry about cleaning anything, and it just works. And they seal nice too. They have the sealant built into them, and it stays on there, and it seals up really nice. So I'm gonna get this put on the front and maybe the rear, although that's kind of low to the ground right now, and it's got a cover on it. Not the one we're using, but it has a cover, so we'll get that. Look at that. It's nice how little things like that can just completely change the look and make something look so much more better done. Sorry, it's early. Words aren't my friend yet. Matt stayed out here last night while I was working on the Ford and built that cool little brace for the steering ram. Looks a lot better. Should help with strength too. The ram and all that stuff that we got figured out yesterday is getting painted. Well, it's painted. It's drying. Oh, look, here he is. Where's he hiding? Tell the people good morning.
Morning. What's happening?
Not much. Making prettier.
You're working on things over here?
Working on things in here.
What are you?
Let's see if you can figure it out. There's lots of clues.
Are you making things worse? Oh, look at that. That looks better.
Yeah, that's what I was just saying. It's crazy how little things like that can make things look so much more done.
It looks like a professional axle now.
I think that's what I said was professional.
What about, I see some red paint in there.
You see red paint in where?
I thought I saw red paint in there.
Oh, yeah. I cleaned that ram off and it's being turned black.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
I thought you spray painted something there. I can see red powder.
Well, that's powder.
All right, things are looking good. We have filled the transmission and the transfer case with fluids, and that reminded me we have a breather, so I routed that breather all the way up to the top of the engine, and then that reminded me we're going to have to plumb brake lines and electrical. And I was looking at the frame and I thought, you know what, there's no place to mount that stuff, like nothing to zip tie it to. So you guys might not know this, but we sell these on BleepinJeep.com, and basically it's just a little card with punch outs for these little zip tie mounts. So I can't do this one-handed. So you just take these and you pop them out. Oh, that went. And you get that. So that little guy, you weld the two sides here and here onto your frame or your axle or your control arm, wherever you like, and then you have a place to zip tie something to, and that comes in super, super handy. So what I'm going to do is do every 8 inches or a foot or so all the way down the frame, right about here, I think. Maybe on both sides. Might want to run a few on the upper control arm on this side for a brake line, and maybe some up front. So let's go ahead and do that. Josh, I got a question for you.
Green.
Do you think it's harder to build a custom rock crawler that can drive over big giant boulders, or is it harder to build like a fast car, like maybe a classic car?
Rock crawler.
Is harder or easier?
Is harder.
Harder?
Yeah.
Why?
There's a lot more, depending on how crazy you're going, fast car. Are you talking an all-out race car, or because it's so much more fabrication, everything has to move so much more.
Let's say you're going to build a 69 Mustang Mach 1.
Rock crawler. It's all custom. A Mach 1.
Everything's bolt-on?
Everything's, for the most part, bolt-on, unless you're doing repair.
Yeah. I was just thinking about all of the people that build classic cars, and if we were to do that, if it would be easier than this or harder than this, I didn't know.
It's easier, but it's still very time consuming because everything needs to be perfect. Especially if you're doing a show car, it's got to be perfect. And it depends on how rusted out it was too. If you're starting with a rusty heap, then it's a lot of work. But
yeah, but nothing has to be outside of the box. Everything on this, I think, we had to think outside of the box to solve all these problems. But with a classic car, maybe it's already kind of figured out with bolt-on components. For the most part.
Yeah, if you're doing something, so when I was doing the antique stuff from the 10s and teens and 20s, and they weren't forged, so nothing bolted on. They didn't sell parts. If you needed a part, either had to make it or try and find another car. There were times we bought a whole car once just for the horn. Because it had to be there. It had to be right.
That's concourse type stuff though.
And those two of us took close to a year to do a car. But you're right, that is concourse type stuff.
That's the car show where they look at all of the screws and make sure that they're completely aligned.
We had pretty much a perfect car the very first year we went. Beautiful. It was a 29 Oldsmobile. 29. 29 or 31, one of the two. And we lost because we had the wrong valve stems in the wheels. Didn't know. Didn't know. How do you know what valve stems?
Were they steel?
I can't remember.
Brass? Like,
I don't remember.
because if they're rubber, there's not going to be any rubber valve stems from that era unless they're reproduction.
Right. Well, a lot of them use tubes too. I got knocked on points one year because the spark plugs, the wire caps. This was on a Chevy, on a 30 Chevy. They didn't have rubber caps. It was just a piece of metal. Well, the correct ones had a little Chevy emblem stamped into them, into the little piece of metal.
And that wasn't there?
That wasn't there. Lost points on that.
I don't
a lot
know.
of research.
I don't know how they even know those things, but I guess that's their job. All right, my job is going to be to weld these on right here, just like this.